All right. Welcome, everybody. Thank you for joining us today. My name is Morgan Kennedy. I work for Neighborhood Services for City of Tempe. And today we will be going over the Indian Bend Wash multi-use pathway improvements, and we're at 60% design review. This is our second public meeting. Our first series of public meetings were held in March 2025. And our in-person meeting will be held today at 5:30 at the North Tempe Multi-Generational Center at 1555 North Bridlewater Street. And that will be open house style, but we will have a brief presentation at 5:45, so you can drop in anytime. Without further ado, I'll introduce Brianne Fisher, the Sustainability Division Manager, and she'll be going through the presentation today. We do ask if you have any questions or comments that you save those for the end of the presentation so we can get a clean recording. So thank you so much. Brianne, take it away.
Awesome. Thanks, Morgan. Hello, everyone. As Morgan mentioned, I'm Brianne Fisher. I am the Sustainability Division Manager in the Transportation and Sustainability Department. As many of you probably know, Tempe has a dedicated transit tax that supports all types of multimodal infrastructure, such as multi-use paths. So that's why we're here today. The Indian Bend Wash multi-use path is a little bit of an aging asset, and it's due for a refresh. So with everything going on in North Tempe, we believe this refresh can be a pivotal investment into future sustainable growth and development for the North Tempe area for the next 20 years. So with that being said, if you weren't here with us in March in our first meeting, don't worry, we'll be going over some of that overview. If you were here in March, you're going to hear a little bit of a repeat, but we're going to focus on the 60% design proposals for a majority of this meeting. So a little bit of what we're discussing today, we're going to review the project area and the feedback that we got before starting the design process. We're going to review the proposed designs and, of course, really looking at residents-specific feedback. Lastly, we'll go over the timeline and next steps so you guys know what to expect. Okay, so jumping into the overview, this property is technically owned by Maricopa County Flood Control District. They manage the quantity of water coming from the north, from Scottsdale, and coming off of Surface Street runoff. The city of Tempe has a long-term intergovernmental agreement to develop some recreational opportunities and maintain the 72 acres of property within this space. Obviously, this is a good partnership and collaboration with Maricopa County Flood Control District. They have a lot of regulations that we need to partner with them on. It needs to maintain its function as a flood control district area. That is of utmost importance. With that being said, it does lead to some challenges. We can't do anything and everything that we want on this property without much coordination with that governmental body and the Army Corps of Engineers for the health and safety of our residents. So as part of the City of Tempe's IGA and developing some recreational opportunities, we of course have the existing multi-use path on the west side of the property. And then Tempe has a lease with Sing Organic Soils to operate Sing Farms, which is 20 acres on the east side of the property. That lease is still in effect. For those of you who are familiar with the area and have been around a while, you know that that operated as a farmer's market and a cafe for a little while, a couple years back. For this project specifically, for the multi-use path project refresh, we are looking at the 3/4 of a mile between Curry to McKellips. This stretch has kind of two access points to the neighborhoods on the west side, one of them being at Weber, and then one of them being at the pathway that's just south of the Scottsdale Police Station. And what we've heard in the past in this stretch of pathway is that residents had some concerns generally about high speeds on this stretch, some safety, some lighting concerns, and just kind of unaesthetic stretch of the multi-use path. As I mentioned in the opening slide, the 72 acres of land is positioned in a pretty unique location. It's bridging some industrial and commercial activity on the east side, with really growing density of residential all around. Scottsdale is growing. We've got this to the southwest, at the helm and leadership of Tempe City Council, they annexed some property to then have the newest kind of development, multifamily development apartment complex. I believe it's called North Bend. And so we believe we're going to see some of that growing density and some newer projects coming into this area. Lastly, we've kind of heard loud and clear from Tempe residents through various planning processes, the general plan, character area planning, and of course, our own public survey that we did in March, that there is a desire for access to more open space. Tempe is landlocked, it's very urban, it's growing in its urbanism, which is beautiful and great. It creates walkability, it creates this great scale for multimodalism. However, there is a desire for more access to open space. And so we've heard stories from residents in this area who use this pathway, often citing wildlife. We know that there is some bald eagles and bald eagle nests in the middle of the channel. And so we believe this area can be a great urban access point to green space and wildlife habitat. Okay, so jumping into some of the public feedback that we heard in March, the entirety of that survey and the survey results is on our website. I'm not going over all of that today, but highlighting some key points that we used to inform our 60% designs. So first and foremost, most of the respondents live more than a mile away from the path, but still live in Tempe. Most of the respondents use this pathway for leisurely biking. That's the first table survey that you see on the top right. And lighting upgrades was the biggest priority based off of the survey results. Again, we had heard that anecdotally leading up to this refresh, but the survey results really nailed that in. There's overwhelming support to remove the fence to gain more access to open space. We asked a specific question about removing some of the fencing to gain more access to that open space, and overwhelmingly 51 folks said yes to that. I will say folks said yes, they had an opportunity to comment. It was a yes with safety measures in place. And then there was also a very strong desire for additional vegetation and green stormwater infrastructure. That is the bar graph table that you see on the bottom right. And then we did ask about future amenities. That is not part of the scope of this project specifically. We are focusing on the multi-use path. However, for future planning for other departments and just thinking longer term, for the future of this area, we asked about different amenities, and some of the top comments we heard were really kind of passive recreational opportunities such as frisbee golf, mountain biking, volleyball and pickleball courts, and dog parks, of course. Okay, now getting in to the good stuff, to the 60% designs. So what we have, you see, and it's not as big as we always want it to be, but on the right-hand side, you see a proposed rendering of our multi-use path, and really it's a pathway realignment. Based off of everything that we heard from residents and users, we're looking at the opportunity to invest into this open space to shape future development in the area. We're proposing a pathway realignment. The design includes removing the existing pathway and lighting on top of the embankment. That's the area that you're seeing in the red. It's the pretty straight shot that you know today. And we're proposing a path the path and the lighting to move in towards the embankment. This would move the pathway activity and lighting away from residents and businesses and create a more immersive experience for the user. You can see the tree-lined pathway. The proposed path is more meandering. It's just to the right of the red line. This meandering pathways, again, more meandering than the straight shot that exists today. And we don't want it to be too curved and meandering. We want to find a balance. We want to support the commuters, people who use this pathway to get to and from school or work. There are 2 points of access where the proposed path curves up on top of the embankment, and you're able to exit or enter again at Weber and then at the existing path that's south of the Scottsdale Police Station. Several other sustainability features that you see on the right-hand side of the slide just include using the storm drain system that exists in that area and using the street surface runoff to capture and use that water to support tree and shade and reduce pollutants from entering into the wash. That's that green stormwater infrastructure that we've shared and talked about. Really heavily working with a native plant palette to support the wildlife habitat that we talked about. Also in the areas where we are removing concrete, we want to be using that concrete as much as we can to slow and spread that water. Those are called check dams. So every bit of concrete that we are removing, we will try to use as much as we can to support other aspects of this design. Continuing on, the 60% designs, this picture rendering gives you a little bit of an example of what removing the existing pathway and some of the golf cart, the pathways to nowhere, I like to call them. There is existing a golf cart pathway that we would propose removing as well. We want to create one cohesive and immersive path with the brand new lighting. That's kind of the grayed out space that you see. That would be the proposed pathway. The red spaces would be the concrete removal as well as the fence removal. We're exploring adding some security cameras to the new light poles that will be lining the new pathway. And of course, we'll be working with city departments and the resources that the city has invested in to mitigate any illegal activity. We do have dedicated funding for maintaining the pathway, in addition to dedicated funding for maintaining the other open space areas. So again, the last piece of the 60% designs is just overviewing the greenery and the public art. You can kind of see the proposed plant palette on the far right. We are proposing much more greenery, very much aligned with our Sonoran Desert, but also taking advantage of the lack of utility restraints that this open space offers us. You know, some of the larger species, Coolibah is one of them, as well as velvet mesquite, which is native and can grow kind of wild and large. And so taking advantage of that open space that we don't always have opportunity to plant these types of species in smaller, denser, tighter spaces. As for the art, our community arts team is partnering on this project. They're going to be bringing an artist on board, and we want to hear from you all. When you think about this area, what characteristics could inspire an artist for their design? That's really the feedback that we'll want from you and what the survey reflects. With that being said, we are aiming for a more embedded art approach as opposed to anything more structural. The structural or podium style art could be a point of concern for the permitting that we have to get through the Flood Control District and Army Corps of Engineers, as well as just wanting to prevent any kind of additional maintenance and vandalism. So we've seen that on multi-use paths, a more embedded approach tends to be more successful. Okay, moving on to timeline and next steps. So as Morgan mentioned at the very beginning, we have an in-person meeting this evening at the Northside Multi-Generational Center. The survey is open. It was open just shy of starting this meeting, and it will go for 2 weeks. Taking a couple steps back, a larger timeline for this project. We, of course, this is a pretty big pivot and realignment. And so we want to make sure we are getting all of the public feedback and hearing from you on this proposed pathway realignment. We do have 90% design scheduled for November. If we hear kind of a different opinion from the public, we can revisit that time frame. But if all goes well, 90% designs in November. The permitting process will be long. We are working with the Army Corps of Engineers on this. And so we, in past experiences, believe that permitting process will take a very long time. So we're kind of thinking spring and summer of 2026. And then since that's such a long period of time, we'll want to come back to the public. We'll see if they have any concerns or if there's been any changes to the proposed plans based off of the permitting. We'll want to touch base with you all, remind you of what the plans are, and again, discuss any changes that might happen during the permitting process, and then tentatively figuring that construction can start in 2027. I just wanted to add a larger kind of picture of the renderings so that it is visible. We will have the renderings posted online so that you can take a deeper dive into those. And with that, you have the QR code for the survey. I believe Morgan also put that in the chat, and we can start to answer any questions that you have.
All right, so feel free to come off mute, or I can read from the chat. We do have a question from Michelle Brown. I'm surprised no plans for benches or rest areas. What is the rationale for that?
Yeah, appreciate that comment. I think that we as a larger team, considering some of the public comment that we heard about excitement about the opportunity to open up the open space and remove some of the fences, we want to do that with caution. We don't want to encourage any additional opportunities for resting, sleeping, camping out. It is something that the team went back and forth on. It's of course something we can always add later on down the road, but for the sakes of this initial incremental investment, we were leaning away from rest nodes or any additional infrastructure that might encourage people to stay longer, linger, loiter, etc.
Alrighty, we have another question from Paul Kent. What is the approximate budget for this project? And I love the art in the path. Should be fairly smooth so bikes are not bouncing over them.
Yeah, I know that sometimes the embedded art like that can lead to a bump every now and then. The approximate budget for the construction budget is around $3 million. That is what we have allocated for the construction.
Hi everyone, just wanted to quickly jump in here. My name is Shara and I work with Tempe Public Art. Just wanted to clarify that Public Art is partnering with y'all on this project because Community Arts primarily oversees things like Tempe Jams, Arts in the Parks, and we oversee things in the built environment like our murals and wonderful neighborhood art grant projects like the standpipes you see around the city. So we'll be at the meeting tonight as well.
All right, if anyone else has any other, oh, we do have another comment from Maggie Sofel. Sorry if I mispronounced your last name. How do MCFCD and USACE address public safety considerations when permitting pathways within the WASH, given the many existing open spaces, open space uses in the WASH today? I'm curious how those are factored into the permitting process.
Yeah, great question, Maggie. So my understanding is that they are really just focusing on, again, the functionality of the channel to work as a flooding pathway, right? So heavy rainstorms, heavy events, they need to make sure and ensure that water is getting through without obstructing or causing any more damage, right? So they don't, for instance, if we put in a very large podium style art piece and the floodwaters took that away, how much more damage would that cause downstream? So they're looking for things like that. There is water engineers, hydrologists that are part of this team where they're doing calculations to ensure that anything that we're putting in or taking out can be mitigated, and that the quantities of water will not be impacted based off of any of the infrastructure that we're doing. I know that I believe Ron joined the call. Ron is a part of Wilson and Company, one of our consultants. We also have Jesse here, who is the landscape architect from work on the team. So Ron, Maggie, I hope that answered your question. I tried to answer it more simply. If you want more details, Ron, our engineer, is on the call to answer anything additional.
Alrighty, we have another question. Oh, looks like Maggie's good. Thank you, Maggie, for your thumbs up. Oh, hold on, Eileen. We're going to go to Michelle's question first in the chat. Is Sing Market a part of this, accessible from Pathway?
Thanks, Michael, for the question. Sing Meadows would, that we don't have in the proposed pathway, we don't have concrete specifically lining up with crossing over. There is, as mentioned, there is some leftover golf cart pathways. And so there is a concrete path that crosses the WASH that our proposed pathway gets very close to. So while we're not making a 100% connection, there is room down the road in the future for that kind of easily accessible heading east to Sing Meadows leased space.
Alrighty, we have a question from Eileen Baden. Can you include benches and other infrastructure in the request to the USACE so they are approved and Tempe can add those amenities later without issues? Yeah,
that's a great comment, and our team can definitely consider doing that. You must understand how cumbersome permitting can be.
Alrighty, we have a comment from Paul Kent. Right now it is fenced, and so generally people are not currently in the floodplain, but if the fences are removed, will audible or visual alerts be required during flood events? In parentheses, I don't think those exist upstream, but wanted to ask.
Yeah, great question, Paul. We would probably mimic exactly what upstream has in place, and that is a little bit out of our control. To my knowledge, there is no audible alerts, but if anybody is familiar with biking north and south in this stretch, one of the areas that gets flooded out probably the most first and the longest is right in the underpass just under McKellips. And so entering into Scottsdale. So visibility wise, yes, it'll be flooding. And I think, again, that's something that we'd have to be working with the county with and on certain points, communication points. They probably have a better understanding of when it is flooded or when we do get a major rain event, how flooded certain things will be. One thing that to Paul, just to piggyback off of your comment, and one thing that I want to point out is the areas where we have outflows, where the surface water is coming and draining into the middle of the channel, at Weber, and at this area, the existing connection, the pathway is coming. One of the main reasons we wanted the pathway to come up and over is just to prevent any kind of flooding, right? So if there's a rain event, water will be flowing towards the middle of the channel. It'll be flowing east. Our path, instead of going straight and getting flooded out, will be coming up and over, allowing the water to go underneath the hard infrastructure. The bike path is then taking you up and over. So hopefully we're preventing any kind of not being able to use the path by coming up and over where the most likely areas will be flooded in a rain event. But Paul, we can look more into kind of what the county is doing in terms of any kind of alert system, audible or visible alerts in the future.
Paul did give a thumbs up, so just throwing that out there. Anyone else wants to come off mute and ask any questions or have any comments? Oh, we have one from Eileen. Have you had a chance to review the recent Scottsdale Park planning effort? Improvements to Indian Bend Wash public facilities was of the utmost importance. In parentheses, everything is from the 1960s to the 70s. There may be interesting comments or ideas there to consider.
Awesome. I knew that there was some work being done in that area. Again, our landscape architect team, Work Urban Design, local veteran-owned business. They're actually based out of Scottsdale, and they work with Scottsdale a lot. So I believe that they've mentioned this park planning effort. And so great comment. Happy. We should definitely look at that and see what kind of improvements they're working on for a nice, seamless pathway that enters into Tempe and into our awesome downtown.
Anyone else have any comments they'd like to share through chat or come off mic? Alrighty, well, as you can see, the survey QR code is on this slide, so please take the survey. It will be open till October 9th, and if you have any questions or anything else that comes up about this project after, Brianne Fisher's email is right there, so feel free to reach out, and we'll have our in-person meeting tonight at North Tempe Multi-Gen at 5:30. All right, thank you everyone for joining. We really appreciate it, and thank you for sharing your feedback and your comments. Hope you have a great day.
Thank you. Appreciate the Zoom. Bye-bye.
Thank you, Michelle. Bye.
Thank you.
Thank
Thank you.
Thanks.
Tim.
Bye, everybody.
Bye.